Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Kat here. Kat, you're been on a mission in the food space for quite some time, but now you're really focusing on bringing it this like nutritional foundation that people really need to have a functional, healthy life to millions of people through something that's like the ultimate supplement in many in many ways. It has really everything that you need to function properly to have a really healthy and well balanced life. You're spearheading this at Athletic Greens as the president now. You have a lot of experience with working with food brands. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, Kat, where did your passion initially for like business leadership and wanting to work in the food and kind of the food space begin? Like, was this something you had when you were young? Like, when did you know, like, hey, this is the direction I'm going to go in?
No, I'm sure like many people, we're all on a journey and opportunities lead to opportunities and those become interests and then the interests might shape the opportunities. And my initial plan was to become a lawyer. I was pursuing an engineering degree, electrical engineering and computer sciences, and thought I was going to finish that degree and go to law school. But the way I paid for school was working in restaurants. I worked in Hooters restaurants. That's it. I mean, I worked in the mall before that. I cleaned gym equipment. And the restaurant job was the most flexible, highest paying. And it's that simple. It wasn't my first job, but it was my first job that turned into something material. And it just so happened that, and that restaurant was Hooters. I started as a hostess when I was 17. I became a waitress at 18, got into college, first person in my family to get into college. And it was just a way to pay for school. That was it. But I loved it. I loved waiting tables. I loved cooking in the kitchen. When the cooks quit, I went back and helped work in the kitchen. When the bartender needed help, I went back and learned how to work the bar. When the manager needed help, I learned how to run shifts. So I really did enjoy it, but it was never a career aspiration in those early days. It was just me doing everything I could, being the best of whatever that job demanded. And while I was putting myself through school, but Hooters was growing around the world. That meant lots of opportunities for people in the company to move up, and including me, but I wasn't the only one. And was a trainer. I would train new employees and again, worked all these jobs. So when they were opening franchises around the United States and around the world, they would look for employees who had the capability to be good trainers of new team members at these new store openings. And so I got that opportunity. And I then was asked to go to Sydney, Australia to be one of the training team members to launch the first Hooters in Australia, but I'd never been on a plane. I didn't have a passport. I had only been out of the state of Florida a few times in my life, but I still said yes, then flew to Miami, stood in line, got my passport expedited, came back, flew to Australia. And doing that opening as a member of that team was transformative because it was such a unique experience for someone like me and someone who had not been around the world, someone who had not opened businesses before. And so I came home and I thought, that was great. That was cool. I was now really fascinated with business. I bought business magazines in the airport, but I also thought, who would give a girl like me a chance like that again? And the answer was Hooters would. They were growing around the world. And so every few months, I was invited to be a part of a training team for a new country. And after 3 openings, I was asked to lead those training teams. And I wasn't even 20 years old yet, or I had just turned 20. And so I started leading these teams. And that led to, okay, this is now feeling a bit like an early career. I was also failing college because I was never there. So I dropped out at the age of 20. Then I took a corporate job before I turned 21, moved to Atlanta. And then as the company grew, I grew. And that turned into a career in franchising and in restaurants. In that case, casual dining, full service restaurants. But Hooters was fully vertically integrated. So we owned much of our own supply chain. We had an airline, we had our own merchandise company, our own marketing company. So I had this unfair advantage in business because I was exposed to so many. I didn't just work in restaurants, right? I was exposed to multiple industries. We owned much of our supply chain, many of our vendors. And so that gave me exposure, education, in a way that most companies with team members of that age would not have experienced. And so I was there for 14 years in total, eventually becoming vice president when I was 26, growing with the company through all kinds of turbulent times, learning so much. Went back to school. I have a master's without a bachelor's, so I never finished my undergrad, but went to business school that offered executive MBA programs, nights and weekends. And that's how I got the degree that I have. It gave me great grounding in financial acumen, helped me build an incredible set of relationships with people who were also, moving through their careers. But I wasn't doing it to get a job. I already had a job that I loved. I wanted to complement what I lacked. I lacked the degree. I lacked some of the specific, sophisticated financial education. I knew how to run a business. I could operate circles around anyone. I could run my own P&L of a restaurant or of a division or company or department, but I still missed some of those more sophisticated elements. And so that's why I went that path. Finished, got my degree I graduated in December of 2010, which was 2 months after I took a new gig being president of Cinnabon to turn that business around out of the Great Recession. It was based in malls and airports. People stopped shopping and traveling during recessions. And so there was a lot of economic challenge, not only in the macro environment, but with that business model in particular. But I love the brand. I grew up working in malls and thought it was cool and so nostalgic. And so they gave me this incredible opportunity. I was 31 when I became president of a global brand leading a turnaround, led the turnaround, helped accelerate a multi-channel, what became an omni-channel empire for a CPG brand with Cinnabon, then moved to be group president of the parent company Focus Brands, where we built the CPG muscle for the other brands like Moe's Southwest Grill and Auntie Anne's Pretzels. So people know me for Cinnabon, but I spent more time out of Cinnabon at Focus Brands than I spent in. And then I became president and COO of the parent company, managing all brands, all 8.5 brands. If you include Seattle's Best International, we were the licensee, all divisions. I managed 9 presidents. And that was my last 4 years at Focus Brands. And so we had some fun for you brands, sugary dessert brands that are very different than the business I run today. But we also had more typical lunch, healthier brands like Schlotzsky's, McAllister's, Moe's Southwest Grill. We took Jamba Juice private from being a publicly traded company, and it had not been nurtured as the health movement had moved on. It was like the creator of this smoothie movement, but then all these other much more green, lean, plant-forward brands developed, and that poor brand did not evolve. And so that was the opportunity for us to take it private and bring it into the modern era, keep it true to what it was from a price point and a flavor perspective, but add plant-based options, reduce sugar, take calories down. You should do all the things that you would think should be done without trying to make it something that it wasn't. And that was really energizing for me as the last brand that we acquired while I was there. And so all in 10 years at Focus Brands and in various roles. But in that journey, I became an angel investor to early stage companies, over 60 early stage businesses today that I'm still an angel investor in. And many of those were health, wellness, and better for you brands. So what people won't see on the resume or pay attention, they see Hooters and Cinnabon because they're well-known brands, but the healthful brands that I ran, the more healthful businesses that I put my personal time, my personal capital into for about a decade. And you bring those together and it starts to make a lot more sense, not to mention my own personal health and wellness journey. Like most people don't start out as teenagers as like health and wellness freaks. We eat sugar and we don't know these things that we could and should. And then we learn and we grow and we evolve. And I got older. I got more serious about my health and nutrition. I wanted that to be more of where I put all my time, not just my personal time, but my work time. I had 2 kids, one when I was 39, one when I was 41, lots of miscarriages in between. And so health and fitness became a real passion for me. I wanted to live long and strong. I want to live long and strong for myself, for my family, for my kids. And I can't unlearn the things I've learned. I can't unhear the great education from podcasts. I can't unread what I've read that helped me evolve my position on food and nutrition and habits, and eventually what type of business I would run. And so it was fortuitous that I was on that journey when I met Chris Ashenden, the founder of what was then called Athletic Greens, now AG1, who was building this comprehensive nutrition solution that was all about nutrients and gut health, not a meal replacement, not protein, not something that takes the place of good foundational habits, but something that supplements the nutrients that are harder and harder for us to get in a modern diet and a modern lifestyle, and the gut health support that a modern lifestyle requires for many of us. And so this combination of multivitamin, phytonutrients that in combination in different quantities helps feed the good gut bacteria to result in things like increased short chain fatty acids or increased presence of good bacteria. And then I experienced it as a customer. I was a customer before I advised Chris. And so put all that together, it made me joining AG1 make a lot of sense. I advised him for 6 months, got to know him deeply, appreciate his complex entrepreneurial journey, really appreciate the size, the scale, the growth of the company, and even further appreciate the quality of the product. And so I joined as president, COO, board member in November of 21. And since then, we've been on this wild journey of growth, learning, focusing on our customers and product, building an incredible science and nutrition team, building up an incredible sourcing and supply chain team, evolving our marketing strategy, broadening it to where we are today as one of the largest nutrition companies, certainly supplement companies in the world.
So when you decided you want to be involved with AG1, like, the idea made a lot of sense, but why wasn't it more present in the industry beforehand? Like, why do you think that, you guys were really the ones to spearhead making this like full, all encompassing nutritional, like value in something that you can easily consume?
There's a lot of reasons. I mean, one, our business is direct to consumer today, and many of the businesses that are on retail shelves have a need to take shelf space. And if you need to take shelf space, that means you need to launch a bunch of SKUs, right? Because you need a block. You need a shelf block to catch the impulse of the shopper and to really own that real estate. So that certainly is a piece of what incentivizes company to keep things in their parts. The other thing is, if you keep things in their parts, if you add up what customers have to pay for them, those companies make more. When you blend it all in and it's one packaging solution, it's a more efficient solution. And so it's also worse for the planet to be in a bunch of bottles and pouches and pills and powders. So there were many reasons. The industry itself, retail as a channel of distribution that drives a certain go-to-market strategy. And then there's just the reality that a lot of companies aren't great actors in the space. There's some good actors, but there's some not great actors, people who don't care what's in it. They don't third-party test it. They don't validate the label. They're not certified. They don't continually improve it. They put things in it that might not be helpful. Or again, they try to sell you a lot of separate things. And then how do you know how to blend it? And how do you keep up with it if you have 30 pills and 20 powders? It's hard. It's not impossible, but not customer centered. And so Chris, the founder, had his own health issues, like many people who get started in this space. And he was like, that's enough. I'm going to do it a different way, a better way. And figured out that if you take whole foods, plants, herbs, things that are essentially phytonutrients, and you don't need a lot, the body just needs diversity, varying degrees of those, a full stack multivitamin, but in a powdered form, a more absorbable form, not pills. And then pro and prebiotics that support gut health. You put that together. If you can do it with a clean label, which we do, and make it taste good, which is hard, then people will actually drink it, stick with it. It's good enough to drink in just water, and experience benefits over time because of the quality of those ingredients, the combination of them, the research behind them that ties to those benefits, and the consistency of sticking with that habit. And that was novel at the time. Still, some of that approach is very novel today. Many people try to emulate or copy or do their own thing, but they're not NSF or sport certified. They don't have third-party testing. If you ask them for a COA, you would have really, really not great levels of things that people don't want: toxins, heavy metals, etc. We hold the highest standard in those categories and put ourselves through the testing. And if we have an ingredient that doesn't meet the testing, we don't use it, or we pull back, or we reformulate, right? We constantly are looking at this and raising the bar. And then one of the things we do that's different, that is also something others don't do, not many, is we run research, and even more recently, human placebo-controlled randomized human clinical trials on the finished product, not just the research, the long established research on these ingredients. And that's expensive. It takes time, it takes money, it takes capability. And some people don't have those resources or don't want to add, because you can get away with not having it in the space, but I don't think for long. I think customers must demand a higher standard, and we're not done. There's so much more we can do, but we're certainly one of the ones pushing the bar. So there's a lot of industry incentives to keep people doing things separate and not with the highest quality. And there's a group of us in the space that are moving things in a different direction. And it's hard to put all this stuff together and have it taste good. And that's something that people are shocked. They see it and it's green, and then it's not greens. It's not a replacement for food, but it's still green. There's a lot of phytonutrients that are green in it, whole foods that are green. And they're like, oh, I don't know how that's going to taste. And people drink it and they're like, oh, not that bad. Better than I thought. And then they start to crave it. And so that's a bit of our magic is we know how to take these very complex, highly affected by seasons and regions ingredients and blend them in a way and with a quality and with testing that results in something we all drink every day. We're desperate for the people we love to drink every day. It's intended for daily use, not therapeutic levels for occasional use. And do that in a way that it's tasty enough to stick with the habit. It's hard. It's freaking hard. And it's expensive to do it this way. And the fact that we go direct to the customer, we have a direct relationship. Doesn't mean we'll never be in retail. But being direct with the customer removed some of those incentives and dynamics from our equation.
Like, what are some of your short-term now and long-term goals for the brand? Like, you guys have established a new branding, kind of changed the way the name is. You still have this green around it, but you can convey like a high quality, good taste. Like, what do you want to now accomplish with the brand? Like, what are some of your short-term and long-term goals?
I mean, we evolved the packaging and the branding in August of 21. So it's been a minute. Most people know us as AG1. A lot of people don't even know the Athletic Greens history. They don't know what the A and the G come from. And so the goal of that was to modernize the branding. It's a 14-year-old business and it needed some love. The packaging and the branding weren't necessarily as contemporary or universally appealing as they are now. It also gave us more permission to focus on the fact that, yes, it's green and there are green whole foods in it, but it's not greens or replacement for greens. It's more the replacement of what the multivitamin was supposed to be and gut health support. So this AG1, this one thing that is the foundation that you layer on top of whole foods and a healthy diet. And then some people have very particular needs where they need to supplement further on top, guided by a physician, or where they need therapeutic doses of an ingredient for some particular need, which is not a daily thing forever. It's something you might burst for a particular moment or need you have. And that should be guided by a physician. And so that was the goal then. Now the goal is to continue to raise the bar in a different way, which is continued scientific rigor, continued research, and continuing to invest in the good work underneath that articulates not just how do people feel. That's easy to do observation, not easy, but it's more easy to do observational studies where people say, well, I took this for 30 days and here's how I felt. And that's real, right? People care about what they feel. But what we have to do is layer on whether you feel it or not, what's actually happening in the body. Like when you eat broccoli, you don't feel better the next day. You're not like, oh, I feel great. Same thing with some people whenever they take a supplement. But you should, if you're going to invest in it and use it to layer in your performance, you should have some evidence as to what's happening. And the evidence is in the ingredients and their clinical studies over many, many decades that most of us use to make these ingredients, but layering on the finished product, there's synergy. Some things work better together. Many people have heard D3K2, right? Take it together. There are reasons. Some people have heard black pepper and turmeric. There are certain phytonutrients or combinations of ingredients that create more optimal outcomes, more visible, more high impact outcomes. And so that's why we test our whole formula. It's not just what the individual things do, it's how they act together. And so that's our world right now. And then innovation. We have quite an interesting innovation pipeline. We don't speak about it publicly, but and we have iterated AG1 for many years. This is we've done over 40 meaningful iterations. If you include the tiny ones we were at iteration 52, the next will be iteration 53. And we just keep pursuing excellence, like new research, new information, new access to an ingredient at our quality standard at scale. If it can be added in instead of selling someone something separate and create more impact, we do that. So science, research, innovation, and channels. We're starting to explore and experiment with bringing AG1, meeting people where they are, different clubs, travel venues, hotels, experiential retail, things like that. So physical product innovation, geographic expansion, channel expansion, but on an increasingly strong foundation of science in a space that's not known for it.
Well, I mean, you're doing a lot, so I'm definitely excited to see how AG1 continues to grow, and I think a lot of people need what you're building. So appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me.